it somehow got even better for the Spurs as Shams Charania drops multiple Hawks trade bombs as they've sent away DeAndre Hunter for Karis LeVert and George Niang, but they've also shipped off Bogdan Bogdanovic. RC Buford and the Spurs' whole front office is rejoicing at this as the Hawks look to be a much worse team this year, and that pick has turned into even more gold. We got to dive into exactly what the Hawks did, the implications on them this season, and how it affects the Spurs long-term coming up on this episode of Spurs Digest. Because as you know, we got all the latest trades, rumors, reports. We're like 150 subscribers away from 5,000, and 3/4 you watching this video are not subscribed. If all of you who are not subscribed hit that button, we'd well past 5,000. Thank you for being here. It's completely free. Let's dive right into the video. And I want to start with the big trade, the DeAndre Hunter trade. This is what everyone's talking about. Look, my opinion, the Atlanta Hawks kind of got fleeced in this one. Now, some Hawks fans are okay with it, but I don't really get it. Like, let's look at it. The Atlanta Hawks are trading forward DeAndre Hunter to the Cleveland Cavaliers for Karis LeVert, George Niang, 3 second-round picks, and 2 swaps, sources tell ESPN. So, you know, objectively, they get some draft capital back, though they did ship some out a little later in the day. I don't know if it was any of the same picks. The full details haven't quite dropped, but right away, you look at this and you're like, how does that make sense for Atlanta? Let's look at DeAndre Hunter's stats. I mean, look, straight up, this dude was one of their best players this year. I'm pretty sure he's their second leading scorer behind Tre Young. Might be third, but I think he's second. 19 points per game, 4 rebounds per game, and he's had a good stretch as of late. DeAndre Hunter's been playing well. The dude's been averaging about 20 plus a game over the last 5 games. He's been having a good season overall, fairly efficient, 39% from 3, a plus defender. This guy's a fantastic wing, and he was one of Atlanta's best players. Now, I always tend to think Hunter is younger than he actually is. I think that's because he came into the league at like the age of 22, I believe. So even though he's only, 5-ish years into his career, he's 27 years old. I still think of him as a young guy to develop, but realistically, he's in the middle of his prime. And Atlanta, like, they were talking about getting a guy like Brandon Ingram, and it certainly seems like when a lot of their trade talks probably fell through, and Brandon Ingram ended up going to Toronto, and other things started to happen, they decided, you know what? Let's just unload and let's retool with some things that are a little bit different. And they shipped off DeAndre Hunter to the Cavs. And in return, look, Karis LeVert can kind of fill in that role. Look, he's a fantastic shooter. He'll fill that in for sure. He's a 41% three-point shooter, averaging 10 a game, but he's not a high-volume guy anymore. He's 30 years old. He started to decline for a few years. He can score in isolation on occasion, but I don't know. He doesn't fill that nice 3-and-D plus overall scoring role that DeAndre Hunter filled for the Hawks. So right now, like, I'm not going to break this whole trade down from the Hawks side. All I'm saying is that the return, George Niang, sure, 9 points a game, can shoot the 3 well. They got a couple 30-year-old wings to try and replace DeAndre Hunter in the aggregate, though neither of them are really as good defenders as Hunter. So straight up looking at these stats, this makes Atlanta objectively worse in my opinion. I don't really see how that helps them. They're just adding 2 guys that don't add up to the one they lost. They could try and add up the minutes, but I don't think that's how that's going to work. And not only that, the Cavs have gotten better. Not that that necessarily affects the Hawks, but the picture of the Eastern Conference, like, it's getting very competitive at the top. So any games down the stretch that Atlanta has against some other top teams, it's going to be tougher. The Cavs starters are now Garland, Mitchell, Hunter, Mobley, and Allen. Not going to dive into that because that's not relevant for the Spurs, but my gosh, this trade does have big implications because right now, losing DeAndre Hunter, like I said, affects Atlanta's starting lineup very badly. We look at their team right now, not to mention, they also traded Bogey, and I'll get into that in a second. Actually, you know what? Let's just get into the Bogey stuff right now, because they also traded Bogdan Bogdanovic, and they traded him for Terrence Mann. They traded him along with 3 second-round picks for Terrence Mann and Bones Highland, and right away, my thought was like, okay, like, in my head, Terrence Mann and Bones Highland are not bad, right? I mean, Bogdan has been pretty good this year. He's a solid player, averaging 10 a game. His three-point percentage is way down, but that's not expected to stay that low. Like, this dude can be a good three-point shooter, and we've seen him be a very effective player. Players don't just lose their three-point stroke like that. I really do think Bogdan Bogdanovic is a lot better than the stats say, though he's 32 years old. So with this move, the Hawks got a bit older with the DeAndre Hunter move, but they made 2 2-for-1 deals here, like trying to replace a player with 2 players. They do get younger, but like Terrence Mann's 28. Again, I feel like he's younger than he is, but he's been having a pretty poor season. 45 from the field, 35 from 3. His scoring numbers are way down compared to a couple of years ago where he was averaging over 10 a game. He's just not it anymore. I mean, I don't really understand where he necessarily fits in. He's kind of a combo guard, 1/2. Okay, I guess he fits alongside Tre okay. Like, again, he's not much of a shooter. Bones Highland's more of a shooter, but we've heard issues about his attitude, of course, from his time in Denver. He goes to the Clippers trying to bet on himself, and He's okay. Again, he's only 6'2", though. He's 24, so he's younger. He has more time to develop into, maybe their goal is for him to be a sixth man type of point guard for them. But again, looking at the two players they got, he's a good three-point shooter, horrible from the field, right? So we got here Terrence Mann, 6 points a game. Bones Highland, 7.2. Not test, not that, whatever. That's just a test. But Bogdan Bogdanovic is the better player of these three. You could argue. I mean, depending. I think him shooting well is obviously the best of these three. He's averaging the most points, but you ship him out and picks. Like, you lose these two guys. You lose 29 points per game in these two guys. These two guys alone. And you bring in 10 from Caris LeVert, 9 from Georges Niang, and 7 from the other guys. You bring in fewer points per game, but spread across 4 players. And when you look at the outlook of the Eastern Conference, this doesn't look to be getting any easier for Atlanta. 23-28. They were on a big, I think, 6 or 7 game skid before winning one and then losing again in their last game, of course, against the Spurs in De'Aaron Fox's debut. They're falling down the standings. I mean, Chicago has also made a trade. They now have their own first-round pick back this year. Zach LaVine's gone. There's some stuff going on there. Don't know if they'll pass Atlanta, but Atlanta's primed to fall down the standings even more with 31 games left. And there's some other stuff we got to get into too, because we all know the Spurs have that draft pick. That's the big thing right now. I need you guys to say right now, let me know what you think. Do you think this trade makes the Hawks worse? Because objectively, I think it does. And I'm honestly kind of tempted to say this might make them worse long-term as well, though that's a lot more speculative, right? Because to me, DeAndre Hunter is was such a big part of this team. I know Jalen Johnson coming back next year, fully healthy, should help them a lot at that roughly that same position, and now Johnson's blocked a lot less. He has free reign to kind of do everything he really wants to, but I don't know. I also don't really believe that logic in the sense that, like, DeAndre Hunter was already a really good player. Why not have both of them play the 3 and 4? Because if we dive into their depth chart, like right now, the rest of the way, yeah, they have Ricochet as well, who I tend to forget. Of course, first overall pick, by the way. But right now they got Trae Young, and their backup point guard's probably Bones Highland, and then their 2-guard spot is Dyson Daniels and Terrence Mann. So that's like not horrible. That's maybe a bit better depth than Vic Krejci and Keaton Wallace. Keaton Wallace is okay. I don't mind him. And at the 3 spot now, you have Zachary Ricochet and Caris LeVert, then DeAndre Hunter, and I guess still Dominic Barlow, maybe Georges Niang. Like, you add depth, but you're also sacrificing guys who are playing a lot of minutes for you. Like, you're sacrificing a starter, like one of your best starters in DeAndre Hunter, and you're sacrificing one of your better bench players. Again, he hasn't been great this year. Hawks fans are kind of happy to see Bogey go, but you're sacrificing some of your better players in this lineup for a bunch of guys that theoretically can make it up for them, right? Like, who's going to start at the 4 now? Is it going to be Ricochet? Do you start Caris LeVert at the 3? This lineup now has a bunch more questions than they had coming into this season, because these trades are just like, they caught me off guard. But I honestly think this really helps the Spurs a lot moving forward, not only with this year's pick, but next year's pick swap. I don't know what Atlanta has planned long term. There's probably some more moves happening. There might have even been a move as I'm recording this video. But as of right now, for this season only at the very least, I can say that I'm quite confident that this pick is going to be maybe even better than we thought for the Spurs. But what do you guys think? Maybe you completely disagree. Maybe you think these are good trades for Atlanta. Let me know down below, because that'll do it for this episode of Spurs Digest. Again, if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel, completely free. We have all the latest news, rumors, reports on everything Spurs. This is your home for it. I've been your host, Josh Gosse. I'll catch you in the next one.